Welcome to Getting On With Life, Pastoral Wisdom for Successful Christian Living. I'm Chris Field, and this lesson is about stories in our head. You may not realize how much of your life is controlled by stories in your head. These stories can be stories you've told yourself or stories others have sown into your thinking. Part of the way that seems right to us is the interpretation of reality as we see it. The way includes not only our actions, but our thoughts and our values, including the stories we tell ourselves. It seems we love stories, and we love to tell stories to ourselves to excuse and justify how we live. Thus, we reinforce our own deceptions and go the way that seems right to us, which is the way of death. Remember Proverbs chapter 14 verse 12, and quoted again in chapter 16 verse 25, it says, "There is a way that seems right to a man, but the ends thereof are the ways of death." Other people use stories to control us as well. They tell us what they want us to believe, and we often accept their version of the facts and come under the power of their story. In marketing terms, that's referred to as spin. People put a spin on things to color the story the way they want us to see it. If we buy the story, the spin, then we come under their power of storytelling. So the stories in our head are really quite significant, while we may be completely unaware of their power and their deadly impact, being the ways of death. So it's not only important to become aware of the stories, but to have some process to deal with them. Let's look at some examples. A child is upset because they went to their parent and the parent was distracted and in a bad mood and shunned the child. The child then goes to the other parent crying. That parent excuses the other parent's behavior by telling a story to the child. Don't be upset. Your daddy, or in the other case maybe your mummy, is not feeling well, so that's why they were annoyed. The story gives the child a frame of reference to process their reaction to their parent. That's the story told to the child. But there may be much more to the situation than that. There may be stress in the marriage, serious illness, or other issues the child is unaware of. I once spoke with a father whose marriage broke up and whose daughter became suicidal, convinced she was the cause of the breakup, when it had nothing to do with her at all. The daughter came up with her own story, probably based on pre-existing feelings about herself, then directed her story as accusation of herself when the marriage failed. That daughter's story is not based on truth, but it is the story she believed, and it controlled her life. As another example, a person who has an affair can justify their actions by blaming the spouse who was cold toward them. An alcoholic can use any excuse to go for a drink, blaming someone for upsetting them. A person who is difficult to live with can ignore their own faults, demanding that their family forgive and honor them regardless, then putting the blame on the others if they still find it hard to live with a difficult person. It may be true that for everything you routinely do, you have a story that makes it right. It may thus be that you need to question the story behind your habitual behaviors and put away the excuses you use to keep you doing the same fruitless things. Why do you keep doing the same things that upset others? Why are you still being annoyed with your spouse instead of letting God work you through the challenge? Why are you still impatient, or proud, or cold toward others, or intent on seeking your own happiness, or putting up with impositions you've long resented, or so forgetful about your responsibilities, or so stingy toward your family, or so keen to impress people? There are a myriad things you do each week that reflect the way you have chosen to live. And behind those ways are stories you tell yourself in your head. And in those stories is self-deception, or in the words of Paul, hidden things of dishonesty. Note what Paul said in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 2. We have renounced the hidden things of dishonesty. Other translations say shameful cover-ups, things hidden because of shame, secret and shameful ways, and shameful things that must be kept secret. Paul is likely referring to a wider range of things than I'm addressing here, but the link seems obvious to me that we have things hidden in our heart and mind that are shameful because they excuse us doing things that keep us on the way to death. Paul and his associates dealt with those things. That means they must have let God challenge them at a deep level about motives, values, attitudes, excuses, unresolved issues of the heart, and so on. I suggest you begin an open conversation with God about what might be hidden in your heart, such as stories you tell yourself to justify your unworthy actions and attitudes. Don't just go excusing yourself, but seek to be free by God's truth shining the light inside you. And be ready to put off those things that are unworthy of our Lord, but which might be part of your daily thinking. Become aware of and decide to deal realistically with the stories in your head. And God bless you as you do.